Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. I usually start off a tip before we dive into today's training about the number one problem holding back 8A or really all small businesses from success. I usually start off these trainings with a tip for success, just as a thank you to say, or a way to say thank you for those showing up early and on time. But I actually just wanted to say thank you for showing up. You'd be amazed at how many people keep coming into this community and really appreciating what you do to make them feel welcome when they come in. And sometimes we just got so much going on our side that we don't get back to you right away in the comments, especially me. I might not get back to you right away, but it in no way does mean that I don't appreciate it, because I go in and I see them. I'm just so excited that the community is being built where you're able to have activity that's separate from me with each other. And that's really exciting. And yesterday we had over 100 people live. I did not even tell anybody about it. And what it means, like I didn't proactively invite people. A lot of you know that we do the training every day, but people are coming in over and over again. And I'm super excited about this idea of building a community that can be nationwide for small businesses by small businesses, if we can paraphrase the country's kind of logos there. But I just want to start off by saying thanks for showing up. It means a lot that you show up, whether you're in industry, small business, large business, whether you're kind of on the support side like me or PTAX or Apex Accelerators, folks like that, or even buyers. Hey, David Waltz showing up. Sometimes we get buyers in here. So just a quick thank you there to everybody for showing up. All right, so let's get locked and loaded. I got to get my tech going and we'll go into today's training. By the way, one last thing when I say that, it's not just me, right? I'm the face of the training, but don't forget, thank Cecilia is my sister, Gus Phelps, a partner. We make this stuff happen for you as a team every day. I just happen to be the mouth of the South kind of thing. All right. Okay, let's get started with the number one roadblock to federal success. When I set up the training, I labeled it as the number one problem holding back 8A small businesses from success. But what I'm going to talk about today applies to every small business. It's not just a problem with 8A small businesses. I'm focusing on 8A small businesses as we proceed through the end of the year, because there's a lot of direct awards they're going to be able to pick up, and I want to be able to do a lot of training that might be able to help them succeed. As we think about the problem, one of the reasons I wanted to do this training is that I don't feel like we achieve the success we're looking for as often as we should, or is realistic to expect. You should be expecting buyers to be reaching out, right? You should be sought after. Your company should be sought after as like a subject matter expert. You should be winning more contracts. That's a normal thing. You don't deserve to win them, but if you follow a process, you will earn them. And so you should definitely be expecting to win more contracts. And I put here, you should be going home on a weekend. And we'll talk about the number one problem as it relates to going home on the weekend. But when the number one problem is in place at your business, then you often are not stopping at the end of an 8-hour day. You're not stopping at the end of a 5-day work week or something, right? I don't mind working on the weekends, but when you feel like you have to do stuff just to be keeping up with it, this problem might be one of the reasons you're doing that. And so in today's training, I'm going to talk about the challenges many of us face as small businesses, what's holding us back. So that number one problem that's out there, and spoiler alert, it's FOMO. And I want to talk about how FOMO, fear of missing out, is destroying our productivity, or it can destroy our productivity, but not just at one point, every step of the way in a process, as you follow through a process. And then I'm going to wrap up with just a couple of examples of how to overcome that problem by niching down. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonnell. I'm the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training, where I provide tips for success to the small business community. I spent 20 years as a small business owner, and since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. When you follow a process A to Z, you're going to have repeatable, predictable results. Right here, you can see on my screen, I have the 7-step process for the federal revenue success that we teach people. This is the same thing. If you follow this process, it will lead to predictable, repeatable results. I liked how a minute ago I said you don't deserve success, but you can certainly earn success. As we get started, and before we get too far, if you haven't done it already, let buyers know who you are. Let me and others in the community know who you are. Put your company name into the chat. Put your core competency, 2 or 3 words, right? I just met somebody today, and she was saying Salesforce. She does a lot of things, but Salesforce is her core competency. I'm like, that's going to look good in the chat. As you start doing that, people will begin to tie your name, Salesforce, your name, Salesforce. And that type of thing is what I'm looking for you to put in the chat. Make it easy for us to remember you and then refer you. And then I already mentioned this is a community, so please engage with each other in the chat. While I'm talking and training, you make sure you're building connections in there that are going to last you long past today. All right, so as we get into talking about the number one problem that's holding small businesses back from success, there's ways to see if you have this problem, right? And these are the key challenges that you might be facing. So 4 of them I just threw down. One is if the customers are not calling you, if federal buyers are not reaching out to you and saying, hey, we noticed your expertise, we want to talk to you because we're shaping requirements and we want your opinion, or we're doing market research, sources sought type stuff, and we want you to come in and participate. If customers are not reaching out to you, then maybe this problem is causing that. Another challenge you might be facing that's caused by this problem is that you're not being invited to join teams. And I don't just mean you've got some teammate type businesses that you're working with, but none of you are really making money. I mean companies that are doing 10 million plus, right? Even 100 million plus, that if they're not reaching out to you and saying, hey, your level of expertise is something we want to see and we could use on our team, then you're missing out on this ability to grow your company. And it's because often you're not seen in a way that somebody would want to reach out to you. I just did a post on LinkedIn this morning, and it's the 7-step process for, I can't remember what it's titled exactly, but the 7-step process for building strong teams in the federal market. And as you go along, one of the things that I tell you to fill out in that 7-step process is a teaming worksheet. And in the teaming worksheet, you lay out, hey, what am I looking for from a teammate? And so when somebody fills out that teaming worksheet and then turns and looks out into the market, if you don't align to what they need, then they're not going to call you. It's just as simple as that. And often you're not aligning because of this number one problem, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. The third one, right? It's just going with this theme of no one's reaching out to you. The agencies aren't reaching out to you. Teammates aren't reaching out to you. And friends, it focuses on receptivity. They're not providing referrals. If you're familiar with training I've done on sales, there's 3 types of people basically in sales. And the first group is called focuses or receptivity. They often have no influence on making a sale, et cetera. They're just willing to help you succeed. If they can help you navigate their agency or their company, make an introduction, they're happy to do that. Well, if you have friends in the industry, if you have these focuses or receptivity at agencies, but no one's making referrals, you're not getting a call saying, hey, Jane told me I should call you. If you're not getting that, then maybe this problem is why, right? It's probably not because they don't like you. I would argue that, people will like you if they get to know you and they're happy to refer you. It's because it's hard to refer you. And so we'll talk more about that in a second. And the last challenge that relates to this problem that many of us are facing, many small businesses are facing, is that this is an internal problem where people in your own company can't say what you do or what you sell, or they certainly can't say it the same way. What does your company sell? I think we're like a cybersecurity company. Like, does it depend on what their expertise is? I see this often. This is one of the biggest challenges I see, is this lack of clarity internally about what we sell. And so we tend to sell everything, which you'll see in a second here. Literally a second. And so let's talk about what's holding you back. That number one problem that's out there, right? The number one problem you can see, I put it down in number 4, but it's FOMO. And I'm going to come back to that in a minute about fear of missing out. But ways to see that problem in your own company is when you sit there and say you sell everything. Literally, when I look at what you sell and I look at $1 billion company, I'm like, that pretty much aligns to what they say they sell. I would say that you're saying you sell everything or almost everything, right? FOMO makes us do that. We've got to say everything in case the customer wants to reach out to us for something. David Walsh is in the chat today, and he's from the Navy, right? When he looks to one of us and he can look and see that you sell and have an expertise around what he needs or his internal customers need, that's enough for him to go, let me have a conversation, or let me accept a request to have a conversation coming back. But when he looks in and you sell everything, it's like, well, Nah, I'll come back when I need everything, but right now I need something. Number two, right? You're a jack of all trades. This is a spin off that same first bullet, but you're a jack of all trades and a master of none. When I ran my last company, we could do a lot of stuff. We were actually a jack of all trades, literally, but we shaped our company right from the beginning to be a master of Microsoft SharePoint. We mastered it so well that we could compete as a small business up against Booz Allen, against Microsoft itself. When the government looked to us, they didn't look at us as a small business. They looked at us as a subject matter expert around the area of Microsoft SharePoint that we focused on, because everything we were doing demonstrated that to them. Once we got in the door, we sold everything else, right? So number three, in this, as it relates to what's holding you back, right, is we don't realize or believe that the riches are in the niches. This is a great little phrase, and it just says that if you want to make money, you just need to scale back what you sell to a core competency. Just what I said in the beginning, put your core competency, 1 or 2 words into the chat. This idea of niching down really will enable you to get riches. It doesn't mean it's just going to come dumping into your pocket, but it means all your work, all your processes, all your teams are all focused on that same drive. If I just go off on a sidebar for 1 second, soapbox, sidebar, I don't know which one it is, but I love how in America we can say the same word, it means the same thing, but we pronounce it 2 different ways. So the riches are in the niches, and the way you achieve that is to make sure you have a niche kind of thing, right? That one's crazy because you can say it niche or you can say it niche. But down below I wrote, it's the way you say nakes is like snakes. It's not knacks. And I see this happen all the time in the government contracting world, where a lot of people call it knacks. And I feel a little embarrassed. Like I either feel embarrassed or I don't even say anything to them. But it's NAICS. And the way I know it's NAICS is not because Neil's so smart. It's because I look to the people who created the NAICS codes, the Census Bureau. They manage it, they have it, and in their manual it says, hey, it's NAICS, like snakes. The reason this is important, coming back to niches and niche and snakes, right, or NAICS, is when you start thinking about the Navy and they've got Nav War. It's not Nave War. It's not Nave Sea or something. Understanding how to pronounce something correctly. I know this sounds so minimal, but it is so powerful, because if we're willing to either ignore to say something the right way or to refuse to say it the right way, then potentially we feel that same way about people's names, right? And when we do that with people's names, we're unintentionally, I would say unintentionally, disrespecting people. And so it takes 2 seconds to just learn how to pronounce things the right way. And if I could just get people to say NAICS, I'm on my soapbox, or I'll get off my soapbox. So, okay, that's a little sidebar, but I wanted to put it in and tell you that you can find that at the Census Bureau. Number 4, though, is the main part of this slide. The number one problem holding us back from success overall, right? Overall, you might have a particular bottleneck that your company's running into at the moment, but the overall problem small businesses have that hold us back from success is fear of missing out. We fear that if we don't say we do everything, we'll miss out on this thing when it pops up. The problem is that's kind of like a shiny object syndrome, where you're looking here because you see a shiny object and something blinks in the corner of your eye, and you're like, oh, you're looking there, and you're here, and you're here, and you're here, and you never get good at any one thing. And I'm going to talk about this and dive into this in much more depth. But this problem holds you back from getting good in your company, for your team to get good, for people to really know where you fit in the overall agency supplier portal or suppliers list or something, or where teammates see you fitting on their teams. That fear of missing out means that if I don't say I do everything, I'll miss out on everything. But I would submit that if you say you do everything, you're going to miss out on everything. And so let's talk about how that can really fit in the next slide. Before we do, though, I just want to remind you that we've got the July directory. We've got these 3 main directories that are out there, and you can check them out under resources. But this one here I'm talking about today is the vendor and supplier portal. It's over 100 supplier portals in the federal government and with large prime contractors. You just need to go in there. This is where buyers look first when they're going out to do market research. If they have a supplier portal, they look at their own. Then they look at like DSBS and some of these others. And so there's multiple Navy ones that are in there, and there's many, many large primes. Download that. It's free. Download it and get registered in the supplier portal so that you are more visible to the buyer when they start looking. This is especially important to 8A small businesses, when you think about direct awards through the end of the fiscal year, they're going to start happening faster and faster. And you need to make it as easy as possible for buyers to find you. And this is just one great way for you to do it. Last thing about this slide, I just want to point out the Ask Me Anything button. We recognize that there's a lot of people who have questions and you struggle to find anybody to get the answer to you quickly. So we put this button here. We're fielding questions as fast as we can, but we wanted to just give you a place where 24/7 you could ask questions, and and at our convenience, we'll get back to you. But we try to get back to you really, really fast on it. At some point, I'm going to start collecting the questions and just putting them in on our webpage so that you can go see the questions that are being asked. All right, let's talk about how this number one problem, FOMO, is destroying your productivity and why it's important to overcome FOMO and really niche down, like I was talking about, have that core competency. So when you think about FOMO destroying productivity along the way, I have the 7-step process. And this 7-step process is literally what you're doing through sales. The first one, research. Imagine if you say that your company does cybersecurity, data analytics, and cloud. I have a previous customer who says that, but they're about to be large, and so it's acceptable. But if you're a company under 10 million and you say you do those 3 things, when you come into the research phase of the 7-step process, you're gonna get confused about where to go. What data are you trying to find? What are you trying to build? Like when we do research, we always start by building an org chart, understanding the agency structure so that we can begin to go, well, which ones of these buy or need what we sell, things like that. But if you're saying you sell too many things, your research just becomes unending in there. The second phase is targeting, right? The second step in the process is targeting. Targeting is about building a list of 200 names. We just did this the other day for a customer where you have 200 names, and these are the people I'm going to start reaching out and calling during outreach. And so when you are doing targeting, but you're so unfocused, you have this FOMO problem, you're not going to be able to have this consistent big pool of people around the same core competency. So I said data, cloud, and cyber as 3. If you just said cyber, I built, for example, a list of all the DoD cyber commands, a couple hundred of them within DoD who have anything to do with cyber. As I'm getting ready to sell cyber in there, they had $10 billion spend. I wanted to know where that money was being spent and which agencies or commands were doing that. Well, I'm able to do that. And then I'm able to put a command or leads on each one of those commands. And I'm able to build a targeted list of cybersecurity people within DoD. That's a very focused thing. Then I can drive in. And it's the same thing with outreach, right? When I go to call those 200 people, my messaging needs to be the same. If I sell everything, then I'm bouncing around and hoping I can throw out some words where they go, wait, what was that word? Tell me. But that's not what you really want in sales. In sales, what you want is to say, hey, I sell cyber. In fact, this kind of cyber. Does that interest you to talk more? Yes or no? No, perfect. Let's get out of here, right? I don't want to talk to everybody. I want to talk to people who are going to buy what I sell. And what I don't want is to just throw everything out. FOMO means I have everything and I'm throwing it out and hoping they come back. It makes for very poor outreach, which makes it really hard to develop strategic relationships, right? Again, going with that cyber example, just within DoD, I would want to be building strategic relationships with commanders in charge of cyber commands, or not just U.S. Army cyber command or something, but down below. The Air Force has like 70 or 100 commands below 16th Air Force, right? So understanding those and finding the right strategic relationships, that comes from having that niche. And the same thing with opportunities, right? Your pipeline starts having all sorts of junk in there that you're struggling to do any kind of capture on. But when you have really a niche down core competency, when you're focused, you're able to have opportunities in your pipeline that we call slam dunk opportunities. They're written for you. You're like, we can knock this out of the park. We just need the customer to accept our pricing, but our technical approach, they're going to love, right? Whatever. And that leads to proposals. The second to last step here, proposals. When you're writing proposals, if you have FOMO, this is why you spend late nights at work or on weekends at work, is because every proposal is like this complete new creative effort. You're having to figure things out and write it. And you have to find who can come in and write to this. Do we have any idea what this means, et cetera? But when you have focus, when you avoid FOMO and you niche down on a core competency, you niche down on the agency, things like that. When you do that, when you get to the proposals, 60, 80% of what you write could be repeatable. It's already there, reusable. I mean, and so you have that, and you can reuse it. You don't want to cut and paste, but you can look in there and go, well, that's our approach for red team management or zero trust architecture. I can lift that and put it in because I'm not changing my approach depending on the agency. I just weave in the agency words. Well, that's the 20%. When I do that, I can go home early, or I can go home on the weekends. And so this is why I'm saying FOMO destroys your productivity as you go along. So the last thing I just want to kind of mention on this is just helping you understand how to niche down. And I wanted to pause for a second. In a minute, I'm going to turn the slide off just to look at chat for 1 second. But I want to find out, I'm going to go through this example, but I want to find out if there's anybody who wants to put in chat, whether you're struggling on how do I niche down from this or something. If you put it in, just put in and say, Neil, help me niche down, something like that. And then put in what you think your core competency is. And I'll try to give you a quick 30-second spin on bringing that down. But let me give you 3 examples from 3 real customers. This first one was a customer who, when we started talking with them, they were doing construction, right? Or that's what they said. We do construction, all sorts of construction stuff. And it was funny because we didn't really know a lot about construction. We went and learned. We're like Division 7 or Division 9. Apparently there's divisions in construction. They're like, well, actually this or this. And then it narrowed down to painting, flooring, and elevators. From there, though, what we discovered through the conversations was that elevator servicing, maintenance, new installation, that's the most profitable. And that's the one they really wanted to be in. And so we niched down. And the cool thing about this is now their focus out there is driving forward on elevators. But if they want to do flooring, painting, or other construction activity, they can, because when you go in to do elevator work, you're doing small level construction stuff. And now you're in that customer and they love you. And you can say, hey, by the way, we do flooring, and this flooring is embarrassing now that we just put in a new elevator. Yeah, go ahead and give me 2 new floors or something, right? That kind of thing. This idea that if you niche down doesn't mean you don't sell anything. It means you're experts at elevators. And then when you're in, you can say, hey, we can paint this hallway so when people come off the elevator, it's a real good experience. Those lightings, there's a whole new lighting systems that are in place now that actually are air filters and light. Would you like to talk about those? You have the ability to keep expanding, but you niche down to get in the door. The next one is, I just use IT, information technology, right? Had a company saying, we did a lot of that. I'm like, well, what do you want to do? Well, cybersecurity. It's like, okay, well, what are you great at? And this last one is RMF is risk management framework, and ATO is authority to operate, approval, I think authority to operate, continuous authority to operate. The idea of niching down to that is, I had an opportunity, I was working, it was $200 million opportunity that they needed RMF experts. And that would have been a multi-million-dollar piece of work on that big contract. Being focused and niche down like this allows people to have in their mind that, oh, you do RMF. And when they're talking to somebody else, they go, we're going after this opportunity. We're short on RMF strengths, but otherwise we're good. You know what? I know Sally, their company does risk management framework. Why don't I make an introduction? This is what I meant from the beginning. If people aren't calling you, maybe it's because you're not niched down enough for me to easily remember what you do. Do you remember in the beginning, I said there was this lady who, she and I just started talking, and she says she does Salesforce plus other stuff, but Salesforce is in my mind now, and I'm going to just attribute that to her. So if I ever get the chance, I'll be able to make an introduction. I don't need to know the rest of what she could do. Salesforce is her strength, her niche. And then the last one is mine, right? This is where I did digital transformation, software development, SharePoint services. And in this particular one, I did that exact same thing, right? We did a version of digital modernization, transformation. We niched it down and said, well, software development. And then we built a business on SharePoint. And right now we have another customer who's building it on SharePoint and Power Platform as an example. These are perfect to get you in the door because people are like, that's really specific. The FOMO people are the ones who say, we do Microsoft 365, or worse, they say we do Microsoft 365 and Google Cloud and Amazon Cloud. It's like, no, be an Amazon through and through company or a Microsoft through and through. This is my opinion, right? Is that I like this idea of niching down. I like being vendor biased, saying, hey, no, there's a lot of companies out there. When you need a Microsoft company, we are the experts because we go, we're through and through Microsoft, we're trained, et cetera. So that was a long way to do that. Let me just switch over, look at the chat real quick, see if anybody put something in that I can try to address. If not, so there's, bidding process. Looks like no. It looks like it's just conversations going on, which is fine. Company 2. So here's IT hardware software for Fed, state, local. Not seeing that. Motto, riches. Okay, so I don't see anybody asking me a question on it. I'm just going to go to the last slide here. And here's what I want you to remember from today's training, is that FOMO isn't just a problem of, oh, we sell so much, but think about the opportunity cost of FOMO. FOMO makes you, interferes with your ability to be productive. If you say you do everything, then you're going to have this need to kind of do everything, right? So you're running around. FOMO also makes it hard, fear of missing out. It also makes it hard to get found. If you want to get found for everything, then hardly anybody's going to remember you. But if you sit there and reverse that and say, here's my niche, right? You reverse it and niche down and say, I do SharePoint, I do elevator services, I do zero trust architecture or risk management framework. If you niche down, people begin to remember who you are. I did an entire training on it's okay to be pigeonholed or typecast like actors are, because it gets you in the door. Once you're in the door, your customer can know, like, and trust you. Your teammates can know, like, and trust you. Then you can have a conversation about all these other ways you can help them. So the task for you that I'd love to see if you got time to do this in the chat is niche down and then tell me what that niche is in the chat. If you're able to niche it down, what are you doing? And then for those of you, maybe this is your first time, we do these live trainings every single business day, or excuse me, every single weekday. So even on holidays, we'll sometimes come around. But come back and join the training. Go check out my LinkedIn profile. And in the LinkedIn profile, you'll see a featured section. And right there in the first featured slot is 2023 trainings. You'll see the upcoming trainings as well as the 300 plus replays. So go back and watch this. We make this training immediately available on replay so that you never miss out. You really want to come to the live training, though, in order to interact with other people, make connections. That's the biggest value there. If you're getting value from this training, if you've been getting value from 10 trainings, 20 trainings, 100 trainings, consider becoming a sustaining member. It enables us to be able to keep doing this and spreading good federal sales knowledge from Guam to the U.S. Virgin Islands, every single state in between. For all of us, I just want you to remember that government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you in the next training.